a couple things that have been very, very important to people here on the Central Coast of California, especially during this pandemic. And that is the Paycheck Protection Program, otherwise known as the PPP, and economic injury disaster loans, otherwise known as EIDLs. And that's how I will be referring to them throughout this discussion. Now, as many of you know, we're having this discussion right now because we are in the middle of this pandemic dealing with COVID-19, a very dangerous and, yes, deadly disease that unfortunately is very communicable as well as asymptomatic. And because it has those qualities, we have decided to put our economy in what I have called throughout this time a self-induced coma with our social distancing and our stay-at-home orders. All businesses have shut down in one form or the other. And yes, people are out of work. Now, the government strategy that we have been employing to deal with this pandemic, as I have said, is federally funded, state mandated, and locally executed. Now, federally, as your U.S. representative, we have been in charge of making sure that there are funds available so that the state and local cities and counties have the resources necessary to fight this disease. And we've done that by signing into law 4 bipartisan, huge funding emergency bills, including the $2.2 trillion CARES Act, the largest stimulus package in our nation's history. Now, within that CARES Act was the creation of the PPP and further funding of the EIDL. Now, with the PPP, it was designed to provide 8 weeks of cash flow assistance to small businesses, and it forgives part of those loans for payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, utilities, and it covers those who are self-employed, and it covers our gig workers as well. For the EIDL, that provides up to $10,000 in loans due to economic disaster. Now, the PPP and the EIDL, as our guests are going to attest to, are very popular at this point, understandably so based on the situation we're in, and almost too popular. And what I mean by that is, let me just give you some stats. Normally, the Small Business Administration in 1 year deals with 60,000 applicants and doles out $30 billion in loans. That's in 1 year. The PPP in 2 weeks dealt with 1.6 million applicants for $350 billion in loans just in 2 weeks. And so there was an absolutely understandable but incredible demand, but unfortunately at times an inability to get out some of those loans. Banks were limiting their loans due to constraints to our previous customer loyalties. There was a lack of guidance. There was long waits, as we've heard. The loan itself had some time constraints on it, that we're dealing with. And yes, the PPP ran out of money, and eventually it had to shut down. But last week on Thursday, Congress again voted for the PPP extension. And that injected $310 billion more dollars into the PPP, including $60 billion for smaller community banks, credit unions, so that they can better serve smaller minority women-owned businesses. We also put in for $10 billion. This law created $10 billion for the administration of the PPP programs to improve the process of doling out these loans, and $50 billion for the EIDL program, $10 billion for the EIDL emergency advance grants. And on Monday of this week, the 27th, PPE reopened and EIDL continues to process applications. Now, we've heard your frustrations. Trust me, we've heard them quite a bit, and we hear them loud and clear. And more needs to be done. We understand that. I'm supporting 2 pieces of legislation that will dedicate funding specifically for small businesses, prevent publicly traded companies from receiving PPP funding, provide clarity and flexibility for loan forgiveness and payroll requirements, and allow small businesses to spread out payroll requirements over a longer time period, basically making it retroactive. The other piece of legislation will allow businesses to extend PPP loans for the duration of this pandemic and authorize $900 billion more in additional funding for the program. So yes, more needs to be done, more money needs to be provided, more loans need to get put out there, especially as we endure this pandemic and these stay-at-home orders continue. Now, to help guide us through these times, to help talk us through the PPP and the EIDL, how they work, some of the issues, and what improvements can be made, we're fortunate to have with us, and I'm fortunate to have joined me on this video conference, two experts, and we'll call them experts because they've been dealing with this 24/7. Thank goodness for us. The first one is Dawn Golick. She's the district director for the Small Business Administration located in Fresno at the district office there. She'll be focusing on PPP. And then, of course, Corey Williams, a public information officer from the Small Business Administration with the Office of Disaster Assistance, and he'll be focused on the EIDL. And so at this point, I turn it over to both of them to give a few opening remarks before I start drilling them with a couple of questions. Dawn, please.
Yes, thank you so much, Congressman Panetta, for the opportunity today. I'm Dawn Golick. I'm the district director for the Fresno SBA district office, and we serve the 15 counties of California's San Joaquin Valley and Central Coast. So I want to talk a little bit about PPP. We're going to be taking some questions and answering some things that you have sent in. But the Paycheck Protection Program is an important tool right now for small businesses that are trying to protect what we know are one of their most valuable assets, and that's your employees. The PPP program is designed to help businesses obtain the capital they need now, to use it during a period of time while they're trying to keep their employees on staff. There's a period of deferment under which we certainly hope businesses have reopened and stabilized and are back to work. And then the business would be able to repay any balance of the loan which is not forgiven. So while employees and payment of employees is the focus of PPP, the program also allows businesses to use the program to pay rent, utilities, and interest on mortgages. Although again, the focus is really on keeping your employees on staff and keeping them paid. Businesses would work with a network of SBA participating lenders. They're located all over the country. We hear from businesses that had some difficulties the first time under round one of PPP and maybe couldn't find a lender. And I'm glad to tell you that our community banks and credit unions have done an amazing job stepping up and requesting to be added to the network of participating lenders. So for businesses that need a lender, you can go on the www.sba.gov website and look for a lender. And if you went on under the first round, I think you'll be pretty happy with the expanded list of lenders that's available to you now. But the program did reopen on Monday. I know that our lenders, large and small, are very busy trying to continue to get applications in for their business customers. And I will tell you, I'm talking to more and more businesses that have been able, under the PPP program, to apply for and receive that capital that they need to protect their employees, to keep them on payroll, and do what they can at a time of great uncertainty to try and keep their doors open, or at least keep their businesses paid. Excuse me, their employees paid. Mm-hmm.
Great, thanks, Dawn. Corey, talk to us about what you're doing and what you're dealing with in the EIDL, if you could.
Well, thank you so much, Congressman Panetta, for allowing me to be on this video conference. Again, my name is Corey Williams, Public Information Officer with the U.S. Small Business Administration's Office of Disaster Assistance. And the purpose of the EIDL, or what we call the Economic Injury Disaster Loans, is to keep the businesses sustained during this pandemic period. It can cover fixed debt expenses, payroll, mortgage, lease obligations, anything pretty much to keep the business operational during this pandemic period. Now, our administrator, Jovita Carranza, actually declared the COVID pandemic as of January 31st, 2020. So all businesses that were in existence as of January 31st, 2020 is eligible to apply for an economic injury disaster loan, or what we call our EIDL loans. Now, with for the small businesses, it's a fixed interest rate at 3.75%. Businesses can borrow up to $2 million for their economic injury, and then it's also a 1-year deferment. So most businesses won't be making their first payment until May or June of 2021. when the loan is funded. So this gives the business a lot of flexibility and being able to use the funds how they see fit during this pandemic period, and then not have to worry about an immediate repayment. Now, for our nonprofits can also borrow up to the $2 million, which is the statutory limit under the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Again, it's a fixed interest rate of 2.75%. Also, that same 1-year deferment. And again, any kind of fixed debt expenses, payroll, accounts payable, all those that are necessary to keep the nonprofits, the small business, small agriculture co-ops, small aquaculture businesses, keep them operational during this period are covered by the EIDL program. So a couple of issues that come up right now, and I wanted to point out, is that currently the portal, even though the legislation was passed, currently the portal is still closed. So I did want to mention that when it does reopen, you will be able to go to COVID, COVID 19relief.sba.gov. Again, that's COVID 19relief.sba.gov. But I know there's going to be a number of questions that we're going to be able to have some great dialogue. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Congressman Panetta.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Just briefly, if you could, and just try to simplify it. And I think you did a good job doing that. But once again, in one sentence, the difference between PPL and EIDL would be what?
So PPP is a forgivable loan that can be used for 4 specific purposes: payroll, rent, utilities, and interest on mortgages, although it can be used in partnership with EIDL.
And then economic injury disaster loans are mainly any kind of fixed debt expenses, any accounts payable, whatever is necessary to keep the business operational. So a little more flexibility because you don't have to worry about making payroll within a certain period once the loan is funded. So it does give that flexibility. So, but the one thing that it also offers is up to $10,000 in forgiveness based approximately on the number of employees. So it's approximately 1,000 per employee. So if we have a LLC, let's say, that has 5 employees, then they're eligible for up to $5,000 in idle forgiveness, but it's not a fully forgivable loan as opposed to the PPP if certain requirements are met.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you very much. So, obviously we get a lot of callers calling in, and I think this video will help benefit them when it comes to this question of how do we apply? What do we do? What's the first step we need to do to basically apply for a PPP and EIDL?
So for a PPP loan, the first step would be for a business to find a participating lender. They can go on the SBA.gov website. And I would say the other thing that's really critically important for businesses is to correctly determine how much of a loan they should request. On the Department of Treasury website, www.treasury.gov, there was a wonderful new document that was posted on Friday, which provides very detailed step-by-step guidance for each individual type of business, whether it's an LLC, a partnership, or even a farm, on how they would correctly determine how much to request under the PPP program and which IRS documents they would use to support the request to their lender.
And then in regard to the EIDL program, if and when the portal does reopen, we would encourage people, most likely our application portal link will be the same. It'll be the COVID 19relief.sba.gov. Again, that's COVID 19relief.sba.gov. And currently the portal, if you go to it, it just doesn't allow you to apply, but it does have some very valuable information for us. State breakdown of how much idle advance funds have been per state, and then also the amount of idle loan amounts approved. So it's a very valuable resource. We do hope that at some point we will have the portal reopened.
Got it. Now, is with the portal for the PPP, are there any issues at this point, Dawn?
Yeah, so the lenders are using a couple of different platforms that they can use to connect to SBA when they submit their loan applications. Certainly when the program opened up at 7:30 a.m. on Monday, there was a huge number of applications that lenders were working on submitting. I've been in touch with many of our lenders throughout the district, and I will tell you that they are continuing to get applications through, get loans processed, and secure funding for their businesses.
Now we've had this one quite a bit too, in that they've applied under round 1 but they just haven't heard back from their lender. What should they do? Who should they contact? Should they reapply? What advice would you tell someone who says, "Hey, I've applied. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
What do I need to do?"
That's a great question, and we're receiving that a lot too. So the most important thing for businesses to do is reach out to the lender that they applied with. Now, we understand that for some of the larger lenders, it may be difficult for them to get a status update, but they should do what they can to try and get an update from the lender on where that loan application is. What many lenders were able to do is on Monday morning, continue to process applications that they received under round one. So even though a business may not have heard back from the lender, it doesn't mean that the lender has not been able to secure funding for them, and they should reach out to the lender to get a status update on where that's at.
And then in regard to the EIDL program, so I always kind of use a two-part split. So on March 29, 2020, we had a new launching of our streamlined application portal. So any applicant that applied after March 29th, application number that starts with a 3. So if you need a status update, please feel free to email me at Corey, Corey, .williams@sba.gov, and please reference today's video, Congressman Panetta's video conference, and the date. Now, keep in mind, I do get hundreds, if not thousands, of emails on a daily basis in regard to status updates, but I try to make sure to do it in a timely fashion. And Don and I had a webinar just an hour before this, and I was trying to give updates, real-time updates during that actual webinar. I'm not doing it this time because I got a little distracted, so I wanted to make sure to be able to give you my full attention, Congressman Panetta. But now, if there was an application number that actually, if they applied prior to March 29th, they actually would have received an application number that starts with a 2. Now, in those cases, those are not in our streamlined application portal. So there's 2 ways they can actually get a status update on that. They can actually call our customer service center, which is going to be 1-800-659-2955, or they can email our disaster customer service, which is disastercustomerservice@sba.gov. So again, customer service phone number is 1-800-659-2955, and the email inbox is disastercustomerservice@sba.gov.
Quickly, if I've applied for a PPP, can I apply for the EIDL? If you apply for one, does that exclude you from having the other? Can you apply for both?
Yeah, that's a great question. So businesses can apply for both. They can apply for one or the other or both, and they can actually use both, with the limitation that they cannot cover payroll at the same time from both programs. But there is a way to note that on the PPP application if they've already applied for or received EIDL funding, and that can be adjusted.
Great. Now, let's say if I'm a business and I just can't demonstrate 12 months of income for some reason, can I still apply for a loan?
I'll let you handle it first. Take the first question, Don.
Yeah, so for PPP, the business needs to have been in business February 15th. And so they would use what other financial information that they have. If they don't have records from last year, tax records or other things that they can use, they would be able to use whatever financial information is available to them, provided that they were in business as of February 15th.
And then for the EIDL loan, they had to be in existence as of January 31st, which is when our administrator, Javita Karams, actually declared the COVID-19 for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. So in certain instances, if it's a newer business, the one thing that I always suggest, like we had a great question last webinar, was like, oh, my business started like in October. Well, let's say they had $10,000 a month for October, November, December, but then their business started to decline. Well, they can project based on the fact, because we always kind of use that but-for test. So but for COVID-19, they would probably have been able to continue their revenue streams at $10,000 a month. So in that situation, they can project for those other 9 months to try to figure out their revenue. And then that way we can be able to best able to identify their economic injury.
Okay, great. Now we're hearing this one too, because you got a lot of these small businesses that do use big banks. That's a relationship that they've had, but obviously these big banks have other issues, other customers, and they just haven't heard back from these big banks. They haven't given them the status updates that is necessary to, one, to provide information, two, to provide that comfort level and that certainty that they're in the queue. They really feel that, well, my application may have got lost. What should they do? Should they go to a smaller bank and try to get a loan from them and reapply with that bank and that smaller lender? What should that person do who's just not getting any information from their lender?
Yeah, again, try and get whatever information you can from the lender. We do recognize that that is sometimes difficult to do. Certainly, borrowers can reach out to other banks, but I will tell you, we've had a number of calls today from businesses that have done that and found that when the second lender tried to process their loan application, the one from the first lender had gone through. So SBA does limit PPP to one loan per business. So, business wants to just be really careful that they, if they've already started with one, that other lender has not already submitted their application.
Is that the same for EIDL, Corey? Is there any issues with that?
Well, and that's a great question, Congressman Panetta. So with the EIDL, it does provide a little more flexibility. So there are situations where someone has multiple LLCs or multiple C Corps. They can apply individually for each of those particular business entities and still be eligible for the up to 10,000 of vital forgiveness based on the employees per that entity. So it does provide just a little bit more flexibility in that regard.
All right. Now, how do you guys, how do you deal with this one? And maybe you can talk us through this. What are some of the reasons that businesses just get denied, flat out get denied? Can you kind of give us an idea so that the people who are out there who own these businesses understand, oh, these are some of the reasons you're going to get denied, and is there anything to remedy that situation so they won't be denied?
Yeah, so under the PPP, some of the common reasons that a business would be denied, one would be if the business is not actually a small business. And there are a couple of different tests that lenders can use to determine if a business is in fact small. They can use number of employees. They can also look at revenue, net worth. Another one would be if a business had an owner of 20% or more that is currently having legal issues, they're a convicted felon, they're on parole. That would be one. A third one that could come into play is if a applicant had caused a previous loss to the government, a previous SBA loan within the last several years that had defaulted or something like that. So those would be some of the most common ones. And again, that is where the lender could advise the business at whatever point that they apply, if those are the kinds of things that are coming up. And these are all detailed in the question and answers on PPP, which are available on the Treasury webpage. If a business says, "Ooh, that might apply to me," they can get more guidance on the Treasury webpage.
And in regard to the EIDL program, the two main criteria that we use are credit history and repayment ability. Now, that's really helped in regard to repayment ability is that all of our loans are now amortized over 30 years. So whether someone borrows an unsecured 25,000 or goes to the maximum threshold of 2 million, having that loan being amortized over a 30-year period really aids in the repayment ability. Now, credit history is one of the determining factors, but one of the things I do want to mention that if anyone is declining for an SBA loan, keep in mind that a no is not a final no, because that business owner, that nonprofit, that small agricultural co-op, that small agricultural business has up to 6 months to apply for reconsideration. So a no with SBA, also disaster assistance in regard to the economic injury disaster loan is not a final no. And the one thing I would encourage you to do is to get a copy of the letter that states the reason for denial, and then, reach out to our resource partners, our small business development centers, our women's business centers, our veterans business outreach centers, all those resource partners, in addition to our Fresno district office, great staff with Don. I know we try to do everything we can to try to turn that no into a yes. So there are ways that we can try to apply for reconsideration.
Okay, we got. I know we're running short on time here, but I got a couple more questions for you. We've got this a lot, and it goes to what I talked about in regards to the timing of the PPP and the 8 weeks that you have to use it in. So let's say you have an idea. If I'm a business owner and I think, okay, I probably won't be open until July, but I've applied for the program. I've got some grants. Can I wait to use those funds? How does that work? And is that something where we just got to fix it in Congress? What's it come down to? Which we're working on, by the way.
Yeah, so a couple of things on that, Congressman. Number one is that the lenders, once the loan goes through and has been approved, the lenders are required to disburse funds within 10 business days. There was some additional guidance released actually a couple hours ago this morning that if the borrower is not able to get back to the lender with all of the required signatures and paperwork within 20 days, the lender would need to cancel that loan. And then the 8-week clock for the borrower under which they need to use these funds does start at the point that the loan is approved. So recognizing that some businesses may still be closed, really, I think what it's important for businesses to realize is that while your employees would need to be paid, you do have flexibility as far as how you wish to do that. If your business is closed, you can put your employees on, for example, sick leave or vacation time or paid administrative leave. So the key really is that employees remain on payroll, and there are flexibilities that the businesses have to do that, even though the business may in fact still be closed.
And then with the I'm sorry,
No,
with the
do it. Go for it.
program, it provides a little more flexibility because what happens is since it's not structured so it has to be covered in payroll immediately, applicants have the opportunity to wait up to a year for disbursement of their EIDL funds. However, the one thing I do caution is that if you do decide that you want to actually delay your disbursement, one thing I would recommend is to at least sign your loan closing documents so that at any point once you would want to request your disbursement, you'll actually have your documents in place so that way they can disperse the loan immediately.
Great. And last question, or second to last question. On the PPP, you did a great job, Don, describing what you can use it for. Can I use it for anything else beyond payroll, rent, mortgage interest, utilities, such as tipped wages, something like that?
Yeah, so tipped wages is one of the things that can be included in the payroll calculation that the business makes. We have had that question quite a bit too from businesses who said, well, can I, if I don't use it all, can I use it for something else? I think it's important for businesses to note that when they sign their application, they also sign several certifications, one of which states that you're going to use it for PPP approved purposes, which are those 4 things: payroll, rent, utilities, and interest on mortgages. And while certainly businesses want to maximize the amount of forgiveness that they have, it is important to note that for any portion which is not forgivable, that the business would have a 6-month period of deferment and then up to 2 years at a low 1% interest rate to pay any portion which is not forgiven under PPP rules. So again, it really does give businesses some flexibility, access to capital now, and then a period of time before which any payments would need to be repaid if the loan is not fully forgiven.
And you say flexibility. What about for wages paid before I receive my loan?
Yeah, so again, the 8-week clock starts as far as which wages would be included at the point that the loan is approved.
Got it. Look, I know we're at our time limit at this point, and I just want to let people know that obviously you have excellent experts like Don and Corey who are here, who are working their tails off to make sure that these SBA loans and the EIDL and the PPP are working for us here on the Central Coast, and obviously they'll continue to do that. Obviously, when you turn on the news or you read your newspaper, you do hear some stories about some of the difficulties with these programs. And trust me, as we've heard over and over in our office, that there are some things, a few things that need to be fixed. And we're working on that to make sure that those improvements happen. But in the meantime, please know that you have people like Don and Corey who are working their tails off to make sure that you get these loans. And we and I in my office are continuing to work for you as well. So I would close by saying that if you have any questions, any information, any questions, to please reach out to Don and Corey, but also reach out to my office. And you can obviously call my office at 831-424-5600. 831-424-2229. Once again, that's Jimmy Panetta, and you can reach me at 831-424-2229. And know that we're here to continue to help you as all of us endure these very, very difficult times. But do know that there are people like Don and Corey, as well as me and my staff, that are there for you to continue to make sure that we not only get through this damn thing, but that we get to the other side of it and we get back to what we know are normal times. And we all look forward to that, but obviously it's going to take some work to do that. And we're here to help you as much as possible. So Don and Corey, just want to say thank you. And everybody out there, thank you, and look forward to continuing to work with you and serve you as best as we can in our positions. So thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.